Welcome to Creating Abundance. I'm Alana Cahoon. I had the pleasure of meeting our next guest, Susan Drury, at the Soulful Leadership Conference. She is elegant and caring, precise, and a deep thinker. She is a spiritual mentor, mystic, teacher, author, and healer. Susan experiences life as a heroic journey where no matter how great the challenge, everything can be a pathway to expansion, growth, and love. Let's welcome Susan. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Alana. And it's lovely to be here with you because we haven't seen each other almost for 2 years now.
Oh, what have you been up to?
Well, uh, most recently, I just got back from India last week, and I was there for a retreat that I go to every year in the north. And it was a wonderful time. India is a pretty fascinating place. So going there it's kind of like, I don't know if retreat is quite the right word because it's a pretty full out experience of life in all of its colors. Uh, but it's always a really wonderful time, as this was.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that. As a spiritual leader, is that what brought you there? Did you go there for a sacred journey, or is this how does it align
Well,
with who
it's
you are and what you do?
I originally went to India because I was a homeopath for many, many years. And that was I worked with people in a healing capacity. And I went because there was a homeopathic retreat that was being given there. And I knew the teachers, or I knew of the teachers, and I thought, wow, what a great way to go to India. So I went, and it was very interesting, but it wasn't quite as meaningful as I had thought it would be on the teaching aspect of it. I mean, it was fine. But when I came home, it was like, I don't think I need to go back for that, but I sure would love to go back for something else.
Hmm.
And then a couple of years later, the woman who had organized the homeopathic retreats organized a meditation retreat. And I thought, now that I can get behind. So I went, and that was, I think, in 2016, and then I've gone every year since then. Because for
Oh,
me, it is a beautiful time to really immerse myself, get away from the normal busy life, and be in the mountains in a little village, and just have the time to meditate, to hike, to be with other people, and have a very expansive experience.
how beautiful. I almost went to India, but the we had a little bit of a conflict, so we didn't make it that far. But I know it's a very spiritual place. It's where so many of the Eastern philosophers and mystics and teachers, great spiritual masters, uh, were born, Buddhism and yoga. And I know that you write a bit about the Tao Te Ching. Is that true?
It is. I have worked with this book of timeless wisdom for many, many years. And it came into my life in a very unusual way. I was just in a bookstore, and this is about 25 plus years ago. And it was kind of a new agey bookstore, and it was a big bookstore, and I'd been in there lots of times. And I was just looking at the shelves, and all of a sudden, a book literally fell off the shelf, and I caught it. Like, wow, that was interesting. And it was called The Whole Heart of the Tao, which was an unusual translation of a book called the Tao Te Ching. And I knew nothing about the Tao Te Ching. Maybe I'd heard the words, but I had no association with it. But this was kind of an unusual thing that happened. So I figured I better buy the book, which I did, and took it home. And if you're familiar with the Tao Te Ching, it's just a short little book of 81 verses, and it was written thousands of years ago. It's kind of an obscure man who wrote it, Lao Tzu. Nobody knows a whole lot about him. but the book is just one jewel after another of how to incorporate the spiritual into the human life. And it gives very practical instructions on all sorts of topics, but basically the underlying thread is non-duality and really living a wholehearted life as a spiritual being, having a human experience.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and it can be appropriate on so many different levels. So I
Hmm.
found I started reading it. I dropped my children off at school, and then I would just go park in my car somewhere and I would read a verse. And the translation was a little, it took some, it wasn't straightforward. So I would just have to close my eyes and really contemplate the lines. And I might only contemplate one or two lines because they were, as I say,
Yeah.
kind of obscure. But I just kept doing that. And it wasn't something that I planned, but I just kept doing it. And eventually I finished the book and then I started it again. And my children grew and grew and grew, and now they're all married and, having families of their own. And I'm still working with this little book.
That's beautiful. You
Yeah.
know, a couple of things there. I I had a dream once with the name Lo Zhu, the
Yeah.
and I didn't know what it was, and then eventually I looked it up and discovered it. He was the author of the Tao Te Ching, which I had heard about, and I bought it. And so, that holiday season, everyone in my family got a copy. But I didn't study it the way you did. And so I'm inspired. And for anyone out there, it's beautiful, as you said, very simple book with sacred texts,
Yeah.
very much like the sutras of, the Yoga Sutras, and well, in its own way. Um, so you practice all kinds of healing methods, and you said you started out in homeopathy. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about what that is, Susan, what that path was like, and how it then moved into cranial sacred therapy and shamanic healing and some of these other modalities that you're known for.
Well, it actually was in the reverse. I started out with cranial sacral therapy and shamanic healing, but what actually prompted me on this path was when I was 30, I suddenly developed a very serious chronic pain problem. And it was called trigeminal neuralgia, which is excruciating nerve pain in the face because we have the trigeminal nerve and it is on both sides. And something will trigger this condition. And sometimes it can be pinpointed as to a cause, like dental work or you had an accident or something. But other times it just arises. And in my case, it just arose. And it's really debilitating. You can't talk, you can't eat, moving, roll over in bed, all sorts of very mundane things will trigger the pain and it stops you in your tracks. So, um, so I went to the doctor and had some conventional medical treatment, and ultimately I had brain surgery because there is a surgical process that can be very successful. And it was for 3 years, I was pain-free, but then it came back. And so when it came back, I I realized this is something I'm just gonna have to figure out for myself. So then I began to really pursue alternative healing methods and um, went to a cranial sacral therapist, found that really amazing, not because it helped the pain, but because of what it opened up for me in other ways. And I was working with a shamanic healer and the same thing. All of these modalities were so rich. Again, the pain never shifted, but it was like, well, but this is so amazing. So I wanted to start to learn how to work with other people as a practitioner myself. So that's what I did. I began studying cranial sacral therapy. I took a number of courses, and it was going well. And then I was introduced to homeopathy, which I hadn't really known about before. But homeopathy is a complete medical system that treats the body, but also the mind and the energy, that you could call it the spirit of a person. It's a very holistic system. Uh, and as soon as I heard about it, I thought, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that treats everything. So I had to go back to school, which I did. It's a 4-year, mostly it's a 4-year program when you can, in most homeopathic schools. And when I graduated, I began to practice and really enjoyed it for about 20 years. It was fascinating. And because I'd had these other modalities and picked up a few more along the way, everything ultimately just kind of blended together. And I found I was doing less homeopathy and just working directly with people in the sessions. We would go into what I just call it a healing space. So I think everything has combined so that I hold a space of healing in which people will find what they're looking for in that moment in time. And so I don't really practice homeopathy anymore. I work with people individually and in groups. I lead retreats. I take people on sacred site retreats, and uh, I'm feeling as though it's really this human journey is quite something. It's quite
Yeah.
something.
Yes, it is. It's quite
Yeah,
something, all right.
yeah. But I'll say that my own physical condition has not disappeared. I still have times where I'm in a fair amount of pain.
Yeah.
But what has been very true is that you can have a very rewarding life, even with something that is often somewhat disabling or highly disabling. Um, our human spirit is, at the end of the day, it's there and it carries us as far as we need to go.
So you are the wounded healer, and most of us are. We're all wounded in some way as human beings, but when you had this disease, and I love to say East meets West, and both are so important. Um, so the West is our American culture and the hospitals and the doctors we have here, but the homeopathy and the alternative medicine, I believe, is just as valuable and important. And working together side by side, you can gain more results. But you also said, Susan, that some of this work, when you were undergoing it before you studied it yourself, it opened you. And I love that description because I've had work done with me. And then, of course, I was inspired and I have, I teach and treat people with Reiki and shaman healing and a number of natural health and a number of other things. And and opening means we have blocks. We have these inner blocks and they're blocked because they're painful. And so not only is the healing of the physical, but it's the emotional, it's the psychic or the psychological and then in the end, really the greatest healing of all is awakening to your inner wisdom or your soul self, your spirituality. And however, whatever you call that, whether it's God or guru or Allah but it's I like to a beautiful way I like to describe it is the conscious current, the beautiful
Oh,
current of love that is always there to heal you and to bring you home within yourself.
yeah.
So you've written this book, which I have right here, and let's I want to make sure. Okay. Elevating your origins to love. How beautiful is that? Would you mind telling us a little bit more of your story, how you got inspired to write that, and give us a little, because I've read some of it, not all of it, but to me, there's just a wealth of knowledge uh, and analysis, and no wonder you have a 4-year degree in homeopathy because it shows in this book. So share a little bit about your story.
Well, this book, it came about almost by chance because in my practice, in my homeopathic practice, I'd worked with a lot of families who had had a child and the birth had been very traumatic. And often these were parents who did everything right in the pregnancy and, thought it was just they were going to be champions and everything was going to be wonderful and they'd bring this baby into the world and just be, super, super moms, super parents. And then the birth went sideways. And most of the people I worked with, the ultimately everybody was fine. The child was fine, the mother was fine, but the birth was so traumatic that they were still, even after the child was, some years older, there was still residue of this trauma. And and so I had worked with a number of these families, and they had moved through the trauma and found actually a lot of joy in their family life, and and were able to see the birth not as something that went wrong, but as something that was just part of the richness of this experience of bringing a child into the world and the ongoing journey of having a child. So I was creating a workshop for parents such as this because I think there are a lot of families out there who have had that situation, and it can linger. There are things that it can affect your relationship with your child, with your spouse. It can really have ongoing complications. So as I was working on this workshop, I was also working with a coach, and he was looking at some of my writing, and he said, Susan, I'm a gay man. I have no children and no relationship to pregnancy or childbirth, but I'm finding something of value for myself in this. I don't think it's a workshop. I think it's a book, and I think it's for everybody. So I was like, oh, well, okay, okay. So that gave me permission to go in a different direction. I stopped creating the workshop and I just started writing a book or writing the material as a book. And I began to include my own background in it. And I began to put in a lot of processes that people can use for themselves. So it's not a book that you need to work through with somebody else. You can do it yourself. And it also explains a lot about how we develop as children, how our brain develops. So it's a bit of uh, science light, but also some some very lovely processes to help people open up to some of the places in their own life. Uh, you don't have to have had a child or gone through childbirth to read this book. We all came through a mother. We've all been born into this world. And so that's who it's for. It's for anybody because we all share that. That's part of our
Yes.
journey.
Yeah. Share a bit more about the processes that to me, I've read some of them and they come through as teachings, lessons, but very experiential and like meditations.
Well, yes, because particularly when we are very, very young, we're before language, everything we experience is a physical experience. Whether it's we're hungry or we're cold or we're frightened, we experience it completely physically in our bodies. And this gets wired in. Um, the kinds of messages that we get from within our family and our environment, we just suck it all in. We're like little sponges. And it literally gets laid down in our neurology and our neural pathways. And so even when we are much older and we're so intelligent and we've lived through all sorts of stuff, this wiring is still there and it's still running us. It becomes in some ways the lenses through which we experience life. Uh, what we expect out of life, what we expect for ourselves, what we expect from others, what we believe should be happening or what shouldn't be happening. And yet it's all below our conscious awareness because this got imprinted so long ago. It's just kind of knee-jerk stuff. So many of the processes are designed to help somebody begin to get in touch with some of these unconscious neurological networks, or you could even just call them paradigms, really, paradigms of belief that we have embodied.
Mm,
But we don't recognize them because they're so under the surface, and yet we're reacting through them all the time.
yeah.
So a lot of the processes are to help somebody get into their body, to begin to notice what they're feeling, notice what's happening physically, like, oh, that I feel, tension in my chest, or I've got a sick feeling in my stomach. And normally we don't want to feel that stuff. So we'll just do whatever we can to not feel it. And yet it's there to help us begin to uncover something that really is no longer it's no longer valid. It's something we don't really need to keep carrying forward into our
Right.
daily lives and into our experience.
So these processes assist people to open up and really tune into their body's messages. I often like to say our body is our best friend, and it's our body that's like an antenna to whatever's going on. Like you said, what is the headache, or what is the feeling in the gut, or whatever those feelings, physical feelings are. And you also really talked about mindset shifts. Right?
Yeah.
These exercises help each and every one of us to become more aware of what we're thinking. Where did those initial belief systems come from, and do they apply? And then you can start shifting.
Well, until we begin to notice what's operating within us, we can't really do anything about it because it's just there and we don't even, it's there running us. Where Whereas what we want to do is at least find out what's running us. Because until
Yeah.
we find out, we can't do anything about it. And a lot of these things that are these intrinsically wired programs, some of them may have come from our families, our parents, our grandparents. Some of them aren't even as a result of our experience, but they're things that literally get passed down um, in the family.
Ancestral. Yeah.
Ancestral, exactly.
Mhm.
And so those can really not make a lot of sense. I don't know why I feel this way, but I do, kind of thing. And it's, I never experienced this in my life, and yet I have this feeling that someone's going to come out and, whatever. So we might not always be able to find the root of these feelings. And in a way, it's okay. We don't need to find the root. We don't need to have a reason for why we feel what we feel, but we need to begin to recognize what we're feeling
Yeah.
and what triggers it. Because there's always going to be something in the outside world that will trigger us. And as you said, we're like these antennas. We might not even know what triggers us, but suddenly we're feeling anxious or we're feeling angry or whatever because something got triggered. And
Mhm.
yet, is that, do we want to live with that? Do we want to stay always with that susceptibility to that
Right.
trigger? We
Yes.
might not ever be able to get rid of uh, these reactions, They may always be there to a certain extent, but once we begin to recognize them and then work with them, we can make some new choices for ourselves. We can turn what used to be an automatic reaction into a choice point. And I know you teach this also with mindfulness. It's like until we become mindful of what we're experiencing, we don't have a choice. It's running us.
It's running us. Okay. So we don't want anything to run us other than our own wisdom. And I think something else that I think is really interesting, Susan, that you shared right up front is that you were able to cure yourself through both Western medicine and Eastern medicine, and yet the pain will still come and go as physical human creatures. And I think there are many people who can relate. We will find some relief, whether it's in supplements or at surgery, or but it seems like sometimes our body will only heal for so long. And so managing that pain and understanding that it's okay and having the tools, and for you, the way you shared how you embodied the Tao Te Ching's verses, it also reminds me, my husband is a Zen Buddhist, and he works with the um, oh gosh, oh, now I'm going blank, the koans. And it's a very similar way of focusing on just one line of text and reflecting on it. And so, but there are many ways to tune into yourself. And I would suggest to everyone to pick up Susan's book, Elevating Your Origins to Love. And in our last few minutes, do you have any workshops or retreats or programs coming up for
I do.
anyone? Oh, good.
In November, I'm going to be giving a 3-day retreat called the Enlightened. No, sorry, this one's the Diamond Light Body. I gave
Ooh,
one last April called the Enlightened Body, but this is the Diamond Light Body. And I'm very interested in uh, the, we all work on our spiritual nature. It's like, oh, and by the way, I have a body. Oh, yeah, this body, darn it. Um, but I think that as we become more spiritually, I hate to use the word enlightened, but let's say expanded, our bodies are also avenues that will change, what can transform. And so this is something I'm very interested in, and I'm working a lot on this with myself and with my clients. And so this retreat, the Diamond Light Body, is where we're really going to dive into this more fully. And we're going to do some experiential work um, of, of finding places within ourselves, much as we've been talking about, that we can actually transform, I think, physiologically, ultimately. And who knows how or what that will look like. But the the opportunity is to become more free, more authentic, and more enjoying being in a body, because you have to have one as a human, can't do without it. So, why not use our bodies as a pathway as well to that experience of light, of enlightenment?
beautiful,
So
beautiful.
that's in November.
And where can people find you?
They can find me I have an Instagram account. It's S Drury Elevate. And my Facebook is Susan Drury Elevate to Love. I have a website, susandrury.com. And I'm also taking a small group to Cambodia in February and March this year, which is going to be a really beautiful retreat. And we'll be going to Siem Reap, which is where Angkor Wat is. So that's another really beautiful upcoming experience that I'm offering.
Exciting. Wow, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, Susan, for your wisdom and sharing information with me and our audience. And thank you, audience. You can find links to Susan's information on the show notes. And just wanted to share a big happy announcement that my next book will be coming out, and it's very much inspired by this podcast. It's called Creating Abundance, and so you'll be hearing more about that. And uh, till the next time, know that you can embody love, beauty, happiness, and wisdom, and blessings to everyone.